"Why don't you cover that scar?" my brother asked. "No one wants to see that." My aunt scoffed. "She just loves the attention." I stayed quiet. Then her husband, a retired colonel, caught sight of my arm and froze. "Operation Iron Storm," he said softly. My aunt's jaw dropped. "You know that feeling? The one where you're giving everything, sacrificing endlessly, only to have the people who should be your biggest cheerleaders tear you down?" For years, I lived that reality, quietly enduring my family's dismissive barbs, until one scorching hot afternoon, my uncle, a man who rarely spoke, looked at the scar I'd tried so hard to hide, and everything changed. He didn't just see a scar, he saw a story my family had actively chosen to ignore. The story unfolds. Growing up, my world was built on a foundation of duty and grit. My dad was an Air Force Master Sergeant, serving 22 years, and our home ran with military precision. We learned quickly that respect wasn't given, it was earned through service. Then there was Aunt Linda. My mom's sister. She married into the military but never truly got it. She was all polish and loud opinions, convinced she knew the right way for a woman to be, while my quiet mother held our family together through countless deployments. Linda turned every family get-together into her own personal talk show. At my high school graduation, she showed up in a white pantsuit, sunglasses perched on her head, critiquing everyone's outfits. So, when I told her, at 22, that I was joining the Air Force, following in my dad's footsteps, her eyes rolled so hard I thought they might get stuck. "You'll regret that haircut and those boots," she said, sipping her mimosa. "Men don't like women who try to be men." My dad just clenched his jaw. He didn't say anything, but I knew what he was thinking. I learned early on that Aunt Linda's approval wasn't something you earned through hard work, it was something she dispensed, based on whether you fit her impossibly narrow definition of femininity. Still, I showed up. Every birthday, every barbecue, every holiday. I wore my dress blues when I could, civilian clothes when I couldn't. I listened to her go on about her book club, her garden, her theories about aggressive modern women. I smiled through her jokes about G.I. Jane and her suggestions that I'd never find a husband if I kept playing soldier. Her husband, Colonel Raymond Moore, was a retired Army officer. 30 years of service under his belt. He was the quiet opposite, the kind of man who measured people in silence, speaking only when his words had real weight. At family functions, he'd just sit in the corner with a beer, watching. Observing everything, saying almost nothing. I respected him from a distance, like you respect a mountain you know you'll never climb. When I deployed for the first time, I sent gifts home, care packages for my cousins, cards for my mom, even a box of cigars for Colonel Raymond. My aunt never acknowledged them, but my cousins always sent thank you notes. The message was clear, I was giving respect and loyalty, and she was giving me criticism, thinly veiled as concern. My time at Lackland Air Force Base was exactly what I needed. Structure. Purpose. Clarity. Nobody cared if your hair was perfect or if you smiled enough. They cared if you could run 5 miles, strip a rifle, follow orders, and lead when necessary. I excelled because I understood discipline. By the time I was a second lieutenant, I'd found a meritocracy, a world my aunt could never offer. My first assignment was logistics. Long hours, meticulous work. I loved it. Promoted to first lieutenant right on schedule. My dad came to the ceremony, my mom cried. Aunt Linda sent a card that read, "Congratulations on your promotion. Maybe now you can afford some nicer clothes for family events." I kept it. I still don't know why. Maybe as a stark reminder that some people will never see you, no matter what you achieve. My second tour took me to the Middle East. I was a captain, leading 15 people, managing supply routes through hostile territory. We kept soldiers fed, armed, and mobile in conditions that would break most civilians. I came home with a commendation, a deeper understanding of service, and a scar that would change everything. The mission, Operation Iron Storm, was classified. A rescue operation gone wrong. Shrapnel from an IED tore through my left forearm. The medic saved my arm, the surgeon saved my career. But the scar? A thick, ropey line from wrist to elbow. A permanent reminder of the day I pulled 2 injured airmen from a burning vehicle while bullets pinged around us. I didn't talk about it. Not because I was ashamed, but because it was sacred ground. The kind of story you only share with people who truly understand. For 2 years, I wore long sleeves to family functions, not to hide the scar, but to avoid the questions. I knew my aunt wouldn't understand. I knew she'd find a way to make it about appearances. I was right. After that deployment, something shifted. Not with me, but with how my family refused to see me. I'd been promoted to major at 31, ahead of the curve. My dad was quietly proud. But Aunt Linda started treating my service like a childhood phase I needed to outgrow. "You've had your adventure," she chirped at Easter dinner. "Time to settle down, find a nice man. Maybe use that GI Bill for something practical." I wanted to tell her I was doing something practical, leading airmen, managing million-dollar logistics. Instead, I just smiled and asked her to pass the rolls. She'd hijack conversations whenever my career came up, steering them to her garden or her latest home reno. My brother, Ethan, 3 years younger, a sales manager who never considered the military, started mirroring her. "Still doing that soldier thing?" he'd ask, as if my career were a fleeting hobby. "It's done." We grew up under the same flag, with the same father, but Ethan had absorbed Linda's shallow worldview. I brushed it off. I knew not everyone understood service. They saw parades, not 0300 wake-ups, months away from home, or the crushing weight of being responsible for lives. They didn't get that service was identity, discipline, sacrifice. But my patience was wearing thin. Every dismissive comment, every redirect, every joke about seeking attention, it all added weight. I told myself it didn't matter. But disrespect from family finds the gaps in your armor. At my cousin Sarah's graduation party, Linda introduced me to her friends as Rachel, the one who's in the military. Not Major Chester, not my niece who serves our country. Just a quirky detail. When someone asked what I did, Linda laughed. "Oh, she moves boxes around." Very important boxes, I'm sure. The table chuckled. I didn't. Colonel Raymond's eyes flicked to me, unreadable, then looked away. I left an hour later, driving home in silence, wondering why I kept subjecting myself to people who refused to see me. Was walking away surrender? I'd been trained never to surrender. But what was I fighting for if respect couldn't be earned through service and competence? That change came on a summer day that should have been about burgers and laughter. Instead, it became the day I stopped asking for permission to exist. It was my mother's 60th birthday barbecue at Aunt Linda's sprawling, manicured backyard. I'd driven 3 hours from base, bringing a gift and a fruit salad I'd made at 0530. The weather was perfect. But for the first time in years, I chose short sleeves. My simple blue cotton shirt, jeans, sneakers. Nothing dramatic. But the scar was visible. That thick, ropey line from my wrist to my elbow, slightly darker, textured in a way that caught the light differently. I was tired of hiding. The scar was part of my story. If they couldn't handle it, that was their problem. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Linda was holding court by the grill, directing my uncle and Colonel Raymond on burger flipping technique. My brother was there with his marketing executive girlfriend. For the first hour, everything was fine. I talked with Sarah, helped my cousin with his college essay. No one mentioned the scar. Then we sat down to eat. Long tables, plates piled high, conversations flowing. I was sitting between Sarah and Ethan, across from Linda and Colonel Raymond. Ethan noticed first. His eyes landed on my forearm, and his expression shifted, surprise, then discomfort. "Why don't you cover that scar?" he said, loud enough that the table went quiet. "No one wants to see that while eating." Heat rushed to my face, but I kept my voice steady. "It's just a scar, Ethan." Aunt Linda snorted, setting down her fork with a deliberate clink. She loves the attention. Always has. A few uneasy chuckles rippled through the table. My jaw tightened. I wanted to respond, to explain what this scar represented. But I'd learned in the military that sometimes, silence carries more weight than words. So, I said nothing. I looked down at my plate, cutting my burger into tiny pieces. I had no intention of eating. Then I heard a sharp intake of breath. Colonel Raymond's fork had stopped halfway to his mouth. He was staring at my arm. His expression transformed. From polite dinner guest to something else entirely. Recognition. Shock. Something profound. The silence stretched. Then he spoke, his voice cutting through the ambient noise with the authority of 30 years in command. "Operation Iron Storm, ma'am." The entire table went dead silent. I looked up, meeting his eyes. They were no longer the distant, measuring eyes of a man at a family barbecue. They were the eyes of a soldier recognizing another soldier's sacrifice. "Yes, sir," I said quietly. He stood. Everyone watched as this retired Army colonel, this man who rarely spoke 10 words at family gatherings, pushed back his chair and stood at attention. Then he saluted me. A slow, deliberate, textbook-perfect salute. My heart hammered in my chest. I stood automatically, returning the salute with the same precision. Aunt Linda's smirk had vanished. Her mouth was slightly open, her eyes darting between her husband and me, utterly bewildered. "You were there." Colonel Raymond's voice was barely a whisper, but in the silence, everyone heard it. "Yes, sir." "The convoy extraction. 3rd week of October." "Yes, sir." He lowered his salute, and I lowered mine. Then he did something I didn't expect. His eyes welled up. Not tears, exactly, but a shine that spoke of memories too heavy to carry alone. "Then you've earned that scar 10 times over," he said, his voice rough. "And anyone who can't see that doesn't understand the first damn thing about service." No one spoke. Aunt Linda looked like she'd been slapped. My brother stared at his plate. The other guests exchanged confused glances. Colonel Raymond sat down slowly, his hands shaking slightly. He reached for his water glass, took a long drink, then looked at his wife. "Linda," he said quietly, "this woman pulled 2 injured airmen from a burning vehicle under enemy fire. The after-action report is still classified, but I read the commendation brief. She kept her team alive when most people would have frozen or run." Aunt Linda's face had gone pale. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said. My voice was steady now. "You never asked." The barbecue continued, but the energy had shifted irrevocably. People ate quietly, conversations resuming in subdued tones. I finished my meal in silence, my appetite gone, but my posture straight. When I left an hour later, Colonel Raymond walked me to my car. "I should have spoken up sooner," he said. "The way she talks to you. I should have said something years ago." "It's not your fight, sir." "The hell it is," he said, his command voice emerging briefly. Then softer, "Your family, and you've served with distinction. That deserves respect, not mockery." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He extended his hand, and I shook it. A firm grip that lasted several seconds. "Proud to know you, Major Chester." "Thank you, sir." I drove home with the windows down, letting the wind clear my head. Something had broken at that table, and I wasn't sure if it could be repaired. But for the first time in years, I felt like I'd been seen. Really seen. And that changed everything. After that day, things shifted in ways I couldn't have predicted. The most immediate change was silence. Aunt Linda stopped calling. The family text chain went quiet whenever I contributed. My brother sent a text 3 days later, "Sorry if things got weird. You know Linda, she doesn't think before she speaks." I read it twice, then put my phone down. That wasn't an apology, it was an excuse. I was done pretending. At work, I buried myself in a new assignment. We were coordinating a massive logistics overhaul. 12-hour days, weekend calls. The kind of work that demanded absolute focus. It was easier than dealing with family dynamics. At least at work, the metrics were clear. My friend, Captain Dana Nguyen, noticed. "You've been different since leave," she said. "What happened?" I told her enough, the barbecue, the comments, the scar, Colonel Raymond's salute. She listened, her expression moving from curiosity to anger to recognition. "My mom's family is like that," she said when I finished. "They think any career that doesn't involve a corner office and a 6-figure salary is beneath their daughter." I stopped going to family events where I knew I'd have to justify my existence. She paused. "Life's too short to spend it with people who don't respect you." I thought about that for days. Actively withdrawing from family felt radical. We were raised to believe blood ties trumped everything. But what did those ties mean if they only bound me to people who diminished what I valued most? A week after the barbecue, Colonel Raymond called. Not texted, called. "Major Chester," he said, "I wanted to follow up. Do you have a few minutes?" "Yes, sir." "Good. I think we should talk." "Coffee shop near Maxwell Base." "Neutral territory." "Tomorrow at 1000? The next morning, Colonel Raymond was already there. He stood when I approached. "I'll get straight to it," he said. "I owe you an apology. I've watched my wife disrespect you for years, and I said nothing. That was wrong. I wasn't expecting that, sir." "You're not responsible for—" "Yes, I am," he interrupted gently. "When you wear the uniform, you stand for something. When you take it off, those values should remain." I failed to live up to that standard. He explained he'd been a field commander during Iron Storm's early planning. He knew the cost of that mission. "When I saw your scar," he continued, "I recognized the injury pattern immediately. Shrapnel trauma. Emergency field medicine. I knew what you'd been through, what you'd done. And then to hear my wife mock it. He stopped, collecting himself. That's not who I thought I married. Or maybe it is. And I've been making excuses for too long. She called me last night, he said finally, asked me to explain what happened. So I told her everything I could without violating classification. The mission parameters, the casualty rates, what it means to earn a combat-related injury. How did she take it? Not well, he admitted. She doesn't have a framework for understanding military sacrifice. Your career doesn't fit, so she spent years trying to diminish it. And your brother just follows her lead. He was blunt. Your brother is insecure. He sees your achievements and feels diminished by comparison. It's easier for him to mock your path than to examine why his own feels empty. His assessment was harsh, but accurate. I've spent years trying to earn their respect, I admitted. And I'm starting to realize it was never about earning anything. They were never going to give it. Then stop trying, Colonel Raymond said. Focus on the people who already see your worth. Build your life around them. Everyone else is background noise. He finished his coffee, then pulled out his wallet and placed a challenge coin on the table between us. A coin from his old unit, given only to soldiers who demonstrated exceptional courage. This belonged to a friend who died in combat, he said. I want you to have it. Not because you need validation, but because you've earned recognition from someone who understands what you've sacrificed. I picked up the coin, feeling its weight in my palm. Thank you, sir. One more thing, he added. Linda asked if we could all sit down together, you, her, me, your brother, and talk. No pressure, no expectations. Just know the offer is there. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to walk away clean. But another part, the one trained to solve problems, wondered if there was value in trying one more time. I need to think about it, I said. 2 weeks later, I called Colonel Raymond. I was willing to meet, with clear boundaries. This wasn't about me defending my choices, it was about them listening. We met at a community center. My aunt, my brother, Colonel Raymond, and me. No audience. Just the four of us, and a conversation years overdue. Aunt Linda looked smaller than I remembered. Her usual confidence visibly diminished. My brother fidgeted with his phone. Colonel Raymond sat slightly apart, present but not directing. I'd prepared remarks, but what came out was simpler. I'm here because Colonel Raymond asked me to come, but I need you both to understand something. I'm not here to justify my career or apologize for my service. If you're expecting that, we can end this meeting right now. My brother looked up. Aunt Linda met my eyes. I'm here to give you one chance to really hear me, I continued. Not the version of me you've created in your heads, the attention-seeking girl playing soldier, but to hear who I actually am and what my service actually means. Silence. Then Linda spoke, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. Raymond told me about the mission. About what you did. He told you what he could, I corrected. The full details are classified, but yes, I served in Operation Iron Storm. I led airmen into hostile territory. I made decisions that kept people alive. And I carry the physical and mental scars from that service. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't ask, I replied, echoing my words from the barbecue. In 10 years of military service, you never once asked about my deployments, my responsibilities, what I actually do. You made assumptions based on your own framework of what women should be. And you spent a decade mocking me for not fitting that framework. Ethan shifted. We weren't trying to, yes, you were, I interrupted. Maybe not consciously, but impact matters more than intent. Every joke about attention-seeking, every comment about playing soldier. Every time you changed the subject when I talked about my work, that was deliberate dismissal. And it added up. Linda's eyes were wet now. I thought I was helping. I thought if I pushed you, you'd realize you were wasting your potential. Who did you think I could be? I asked. Someone softer, she admitted. Someone who didn't need to prove herself. Someone who could just be comfortable. I am comfortable, I said. I'm comfortable in my uniform. I'm comfortable leading airmen half my age who trust me with their careers and their lives. I'm comfortable making decisions under pressure that most people couldn't handle. What I'm not comfortable with is sitting at family dinners while you treat my life's work as a phase I'll outgrow. Colonel Raymond spoke then. Linda, what Rachel is describing is called disrespect. And in the military, disrespect toward a superior officer or any fellow service member is a serious breach. The fact that she tolerated it from family for as long as she did speaks to her patience, not to any weakness in her character. Ethan finally put his phone down. I guess I never thought about it that way. You always seemed so confident, so sure of yourself. I didn't think our opinions mattered to you. Of course, they mattered, I said. You're my family. But there's a difference between caring about someone's opinion and letting it define your worth. I stopped letting your opinions define me, but that doesn't mean they didn't hurt. So, where do we go from here? Linda asked. That depends on you, I said. I'm not going to keep showing up to family events where I have to defend my existence. I'm not going to smile through jokes about my career. I'm not going to pretend that 10 years of disrespect can be erased with one conversation. What do you need from us? Ethan asked. Respect, I said simply. Real respect. Not the kind that disappears when I leave the room. Not the conditional kind that depends on me fitting your expectations. Actual respect for the path I've chosen and the person I've become. Linda nodded slowly. I can try. I don't know if I can change overnight, but I can try. That's all I'm asking, I said. But understand, if the pattern continues, I'm done. I won't keep subjecting myself to people who refuse to see me. We talked for another hour. It wasn't perfect. There were defensive moments, uncomfortable silences, but it was honest. When we finally stood to leave, Linda approached me hesitantly. Can I hug you? She asked. I considered it, then nodded. The hug was brief, awkward, weighted with all the years between us, but it was something. As I drove back to base, I felt lighter. Not because everything was resolved, but because I'd finally said what needed saying. I'd drawn boundaries. I'd put the responsibility for change where it belonged, on them, not me. 2 days later, I received orders for a new assignment. Lieutenant Colonel. Pentagon. A strategic planning position. The promotion would be effective in 3 months. I called my father first. His voice cracked when I told him. Your mother would be so proud, he said. I'm proud too. Always have been. I called Colonel Raymond next. He congratulated me, then said something I didn't expect. Linda wants to host a promotion ceremony. Small gathering, just family. She wants to do it right this time. I told him I'd consider it, but it needed to be about the achievement, not her redemption. Understood, he said. And Rachel, for what it's worth, you're already one of the finest officers I've known. The rank just makes it official. That night, I looked at my arm. The scar caught the lamplight. A silvered line. I thought about all the times I'd hidden it. All the energy I'd spent managing other people's comfort. No more. The scar was mine. The career was mine. The respect I'd earned was mine. Anyone who couldn't see that clearly didn't deserve space in my life. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. And clarity, I'd learned, was its own kind of freedom. Without me around, family dynamics changed in ways I only heard about secondhand. My cousin Sarah called me a month after my promotion. You have to hear what happened at Sunday dinner, she said. Mom tried to steer the conversation, but Ethan actually pushed back. He asked her why she never talks about your achievements like she talks about my sister's engagement. I smiled. What did she say? She got defensive, but then Uncle Raymond backed him up. He said, Linda, our niece is about to become a lieutenant colonel. That's a bigger achievement than most people accomplish in their entire careers. Maybe it's time we acknowledge that. And she just deflated. Like she realized she couldn't control the narrative anymore. The shift was subtle but significant. My name came up differently now, a source of pride instead of discomfort. Linda even sent a birthday card, the first in 5 years without a passive-aggressive comment. It just said, proud of you. Love, Aunt Linda. Small words, but they meant something. I poured myself into my new Pentagon role. It was intellectually demanding, and I loved it. I also started mentoring younger officers, especially women dealing with subtle disrespect. Every story reminded me of my own journey. I turned my own experience of being unseen into a mission to ensure others felt visible. At my pinning ceremony for Lieutenant Colonel, my father pinned one insignia, and Colonel Raymond, at my request, pinned the other. Linda was there, sitting quietly in the back. When I spoke, I kept it brief. Service means different things to different people. For me, it's always meant this, showing up, doing the work, and leading with integrity. Even when recognition doesn't come. especially when recognition doesn't come. 2 years passed. I excelled, identified as a fast-track candidate for colonel. I took up photography, dated, traveled. I built a life that felt full because it aligned with my values. My mentoring work grew. At one conference, a young captain asked, "You talked about family not understanding your service. Did that ever get better?" Eventually, I said, but not because they suddenly understood. Because I stopped needing them to understand in order to value myself. She nodded. That sounds lonely. Sometimes it is, I admitted. But it's less lonely than spending your life begging for validation from people who refuse to give it. Then Ethan did something truly unexpected. At 35, he enlisted. In the army. He called me sheepish. "I know it's late," he said, "and I know I don't have your natural aptitude for this, but I've spent 10 years in sales, and I feel empty. I need to do something that matters." Linda was horrified, he admitted. "But I'm done living for her approval. Watching you these past few years, watching you build a career on your own terms, it made me realize I've never done that." I sent him care packages during basic, just like I'd sent to deployed soldiers. His letters were humbling. "I finally understand what you meant about service being identity," he wrote. "It's not something you do, it's something you become. I'm sorry it took me this long to see that." Now, family gatherings were different. Conversations shifted. Instead of Linda dominating, we talked about Ethan's training, my latest assignment, Sarah's grad program. Linda could offer opinions, but they no longer carried the weight they once did. Colonel Raymond and I maintained regular contact. He became a trusted mentor, helping me navigate senior leadership politics. "You've done well," he told me at one of our meetings. "Not just professionally, but personally. You figured out how to maintain family relationships without sacrificing yourself. That's harder than most people realize." I told him I learned from watching him. "Does she understand yet?" I asked about Linda. "She understands more than she did," he conceded. "She'll never understand completely. But she's learned to respect what she doesn't understand. That's progress." By my 40th birthday, I'd achieved what I'd set out to achieve. A career built on competence, respect earned through service, and a life aligned with my values. Linda sent a shadow box she commissioned, my rank insignia from second lieutenant through lieutenant colonel, a photo from my first day in uniform, and a handwritten note, "I'm learning to see you clearly. Thank you for your patience." I hung it in my office next to Colonel Raymond's challenge coin. The scar on my arm had faded to a thin silver line, barely noticeable unless you knew to look for it. But I never covered it anymore. It was part of my story, part of my service, part of the person I'd become. Then, 2 years later, I was in a Pentagon briefing when my phone buzzed. A text from my father, "Your mother's in the hospital. Heart attack. Stable now, but it was close." My world tilted. I excused myself, called him back. She was at Walter Reed, asking for me. I drove across the city, emergency flashers on, straight to her. My father looked older, etched with worry. Linda was already there, makeup smudged, composure fractured. "She's asking for you," she said, her voice quiet. My mother looked small in the hospital bed, but her eyes were clear. "Rachel," she said, her voice thin. "You didn't have to rush over." "Mom, I'm exactly where I should be." We held hands in silence. "I'm proud of you," she said suddenly. "I don't say it enough, but I am. You built a life on your own terms. That takes courage I never had." My throat tightened. "You taught me that, Mom. You and Dad. You showed me what it means to serve with integrity." A nurse came in, signaling my time was almost up. "I'll be back tomorrow," I told her. "And every day until you're discharged. You have work." "I have leave time," I said firmly. "And you're more important than any briefing." For the next 2 weeks, my life became a rhythm, mornings at the hospital, afternoons working remotely from the waiting room, evenings coordinating with doctors. Linda was constantly there, oscillating between helpful and overwhelming. But she also sat with my mother when we needed breaks, fiercely advocated with nurses, and coordinated the extended family. On the 4th day, Linda and I found ourselves alone in the cafeteria. We were both exhausted. "Thank you for being here," she said, stirring her coffee. "I know things have been complicated, but having you here matters to your mother. It matters to me, too." "She's family," I said simply. "This is where I need to be." Linda nodded, then looked at me directly. "I've been thinking a lot these past few days about mortality. About all the time I wasted criticizing you instead of celebrating you. I didn't respond immediately. This wasn't the place for another reckoning. I'm not looking for absolution, Linda continued. I know I can't undo the years of dismissiveness. But watching you these past few days, the way you've taken charge, the way you balance compassion with confidence, I finally see what Raymond's been telling me all along. You're not playing at being a soldier. You are a soldier. It's as fundamental to who you are as breathing. It's taken you a long time to see that, I said, keeping my voice neutral. It has, she admitted. And I'm sorry it required your mother's heart attack to make me see clearly. That's not fair to you. No, I agreed. It's not. We sat in silence, drinking bad hospital coffee. Two women who'd spent years misunderstanding each other, finally finding common ground in crisis. For what it's worth, Linda said quietly, I'm proud of you too. I know I haven't said it, haven't shown it, but I am. I appreciate that, I said, and I meant it. My mother was discharged after 10 days. Ethan flew in from Georgia, gained muscle from military training, carrying himself with new discipline. He hugged me tightly. Thanks for holding down the fort, he said. I couldn't get here sooner. We were in the field. I know how it works, I said. I'm glad you're here now. We fell into an easy partnership, tag-teaming household tasks. In the evenings, we'd sit on the back porch, swapping stories of close calls and difficult commands. I think about that barbecue sometimes, he said one evening. The one where I made that comment about your scar. I was such an ass. You were, I agreed. But you've grown. The military will do that. Strip away all the BS. Show you what actually matters. What matters now? I asked. Purpose, he said immediately. Knowing that what you do has meaning beyond yourself. You figured that out at 22. Took me till 35. Better late than never. He laughed, and we sat in comfortable silence. During the 4th week, I received notification I was being considered for a strategic position in Colorado Springs. A significant opportunity. But the timing felt impossible, with my mother recovering. I discussed it with my father. You should take it, he said immediately. Mom will be fine. She didn't raise you to put your life on hold. It's not putting my life on hold, it's being here when you need me. We don't need you, he said. Not at the cost of your career. You've worked too hard, sacrificed too much. Take the position. We'll visit. That night, I sat on the porch. My phone rang. It was Major Dana Nguyen, calling from Japan. Heard about your mom. How is she? I filled her in. And how are you? She asked, cutting through my deflection. Confused, I admitted. I got offered a position in Colorado Springs. Major career opportunity, but the timing feels wrong. Is your mom going to die in the next 6 months? Dana asked bluntly. No, not if she follows medical advice. Then the timing is fine, Dana said. Rachel, you can't put your career on hold every time family needs you. That's a trap women fall into constantly. Always available, always accommodating, always sacrificing. You've spent 20 years building a career. Don't derail it now. But what if something happens? Then you'll handle it, she interrupted. The same way you've handled every other crisis. You'll get emergency leave. You'll fly home. You'll manage the situation. But you can't live your life around what ifs. She was right. The guilt I felt wasn't about my mother's actual needs. It was about old patterns, old expectations. Take the job, Dana said firmly. Your mom will be proud. Your dad will be proud. And you'll be exactly where you're supposed to be. I accepted the position. The next morning, I told my parents over breakfast. My mother's face lit up. Colorado Springs. That's a wonderful assignment. I'll take leave, I said, plenty of time to make sure you're stable. I'm stable now, she said firmly. Don't you dare use me as an excuse to delay your career. My father grinned. Told you she'd say that. They were genuinely happy for me, and in their happiness, I felt a burden lift. The weight of believing I had to choose between career and family. I don't. I can have both. Just not in the way Linda's generation defined having both. Before I left for Washington, we had a small family dinner. My mother, tired but present, raised her water glass. I want to make a toast, she said, to Rachel, who's been our rock these past weeks. who's built a career we're all proud of, and who's about to start a new chapter in Colorado. Everyone raised their glasses. Aunt Linda's eyes were wet, and she nodded at me, an acknowledgement carrying years of unspoken apologies. To Rachel, they said in unison. I raised my own glass, looking around the table at these complicated, imperfect people who'd shaped me in ways both painful and profound. This is family. Messy. Difficult. Occasionally disappointing. But also enduring. We hurt each other and heal each other in cycles that never quite resolve. To family, I said. In all its complexity. Conclusion, it's been 5 years since that barbecue. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Chester, 41 years old, and I've built a career I'm fiercely proud of. The scar on my left arm is still visible, a faded silver line now, a permanent record of Operation Iron Storm. At every new officer orientation, I roll up my sleeve and tell them the same thing: every mark you earn in service, physical or otherwise, is a record of courage, competence, and commitment. Never let anyone shame you for surviving. Never let anyone diminish what you've sacrificed. And never, ever apologize for being exactly who you are. Aunt Linda still hosts family events. She asks about my work now, actually listens and introduces me as our Rachel, a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, with something that sounds like genuine pride. It's not perfect. She still occasionally comments on my lack of a husband, but she's learned to lead with respect rather than criticism. The transformation wasn't dramatic, there was no tearful reconciliation. Instead, it was gradual. A series of small corrections, boundaries I maintained, conversations where I refused to accept less than what I deserved. Over time, she adapted. Not because she fundamentally changed who she was, but because I fundamentally changed what I would tolerate. My brother completed his enlistment and re-upped for another term. He's a sergeant now. When we talk, there's a mutual respect that wasn't there before, the kind that only comes from understanding sacrifice firsthand. I get it now, he told me last Christmas, why you stayed in even when we were all being asses about it. There's something about serving that gets into your bones. You can't really explain it to people who haven't done it. No, I agreed. You can't. Colonel Raymond retired fully but stays active in veteran organizations. We still meet for coffee quarterly, he's one of my most trusted advisors. When I'm facing a difficult decision, I call him. The respect between us is mutual, built on shared values and shared understanding of what service costs. Last month, he invited me to speak at a veterans event. I talked about Operation Iron Storm, about leadership under pressure, about carrying visible and invisible scars with pride. Afterward, an elderly Vietnam vet approached me. Thank you for your service, Colonel, he said. And thank you for saying what needed saying about scars. I've spent 50 years covering mine. I returned his salute, then shook his hand. It's never too late to stop covering them, sir. He nodded, eyes wet, and walked away. Those moments, the connections with other veterans, the mentoring of younger officers, the quiet pride of knowing I've served with integrity, those are what make everything worthwhile. Not the rank, not the recognition, but the knowledge that I've contributed something meaningful to something larger than myself. My mentoring network has grown into a formal organization now, with chapters across the country. We create space for women officers to discuss challenges, to feel visible and supported. At a recent conference, a young second lieutenant approached me. I heard your story, she said, about your family not understanding your service. I'm dealing with something similar. My parents wanted me to go to medical school. They think I'm wasting my potential. What do you think? I asked. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, she said firmly. But it's hard when the people you love don't see that. It is hard, I agreed. And I won't lie and say it gets easy. But it gets clearer. You learn to trust your own judgment more than other people's opinions. You learn that the validation that matters comes from within, from the work itself, from the people you serve alongside. Did your family ever come around? She asked. Eventually, I said, but by the time they did, I'd already learned not to need it. That's the real freedom, not getting approval, but realizing you can thrive without it. That night, I stood in my apartment looking at the shadow box Linda had made, my rank progression captured in silver and gold. Next to it hung the challenge coin from Colonel Raymond. And beside that, a photo from my promotion ceremony, me in dress blues, standing tall, the scar on my arm visible and proud. This is the legacy I'm building. Not perfection, not universal approval, but integrity. Service with honor. Leadership rooted in respect, both given and demanded. A life aligned with values that matter. Some lessons take time, but respect, once earned, truly earned, not through family obligation but through demonstrated competence and courage, doesn't fade. It endures. And so do I. Call to action questions for audience. Have you ever had family dismiss your work or your wounds? How did you respond? What boundary did you set that finally changed the tone at home? Who surprised you by standing up for you when it mattered? If you were at that barbecue, what would you have said to my aunt or to me? Do you have a scar story, visible or not, you're ready to own today?